Hello and welcome to the RC Industry Podcast, episode 17, with me, Simon Caine. For those of you new to the show, this is the podcast where I interview the most influential people from the world of stand-up, comedy, TV, radio, and today, the Edinburgh Fringe. We've got Neil Mackinnon on. He is the head of external affairs at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival Society. He is also head of media there, which means that when all the world's press arrive at the Fringe, the first port of call is his office. And he's come on the show to talk to us about the underused facilities that the Fringe offer for all participants with their registration fee, as well as services and the support that, in his own words, are probably not getting used enough or not known enough by performers. We get quite deep into how performers can use their media centre as their own kind of private PR, which they don't have to pay for they pay for it in their registration fee, so technically they're paid for it, but it's still included because you have to register. And we get loads of stuff covered. I should also say that keeping in with this theme of background noise, this one was recorded at the Pleasance Theatre in London after a quite long Q&A with him and about 5 other guests, which means that there is a tiny bit of background noise in this one as well, although I have edited out most of it, so you can hear everything he says and not really hear any of the sort of clattering and moving around of stuff. If you are new to the show, if you would like to subscribe, feel free to do through iTunes or Stitcher. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to give it a review in iTunes. It really helps the show out. I cannot stress that enough. If you liked this episode and want to put a monetary value on it and send it to me, I have a PayPal button on the website. Give this podcast a value, £1, £2, £3, £4, £5, and then send it my way. All the money gets ploughed back into the show, so you're just supporting me continuing to do these. I'm not going to talk too much more just because I want this to be quite a short pod, but I hope you enjoy it. I hope you like it. I had a lot of fun with Neil. He's such a knowledgeable guy about the Fringe. He's been doing the Fringe he's been working at the Fringe since about 2009, but he's just so knowledgeable and clever, and he just knows the ins and outs of everything that goes on around August. And so I feel like everyone who is going to go up or is looking at going up would get something out of this, because the amount of stuff that goes on at the Fringe Festival Society that I didn't know and I mean I'm not an oracle at this, I get that, but you know, after a few years you'd think you'd know some stuff. It turns out I didn't know anything, so it was quite humbling and quite fun to chat to him, and I hope you get something out of this. He's also fully contactable. If you go to the website, which is Simon Caine, SIMONCAINE.co.uk/RC Industry Podcast, you can find all the links to all of his social media stuff as well as his email address, and you can email them anytime and ask them for support and arrange a meeting to chat about anything you're worried about to do with your show, media coverage, anything really. They are amazing. Honestly, do take advantage of the tools and facilities and support that they lay on, because it's invaluable. I don't know why we're not doing more of it. If you want to follow along in the show notes, or you feel like you've missed anything, or you want to find out about anything that was included in any of the answers, go to the website, find the show notes there, and everything's linked, everything's shared there. So without any further delays, this is Neil Mackinnon.
So I think that the range of facilities which the Fringe Society offers to people who are taking part in the Fringe is still relatively underused. We have got a full media office service, we have an arts industry office service, we have a program of professional and career development events with over 100 events in it, and although a lot of people do use these services, there's still scope for even more people to know about them and to actually access them as well.
When it comes to someone who's going up to the Fringe for their first show, would you say that, because I'm on Free Fringe and I've always been on Free Fringe, and I find, for example, media offices, they seem to be only stuff for the paid Fringe venues. Do you offer facilities for that?
The facilities that we offer, all the facilities that we offer, are absolutely available to everybody who takes part in the Fringe, regardless of which venue they're in. And certainly, because some of the paid paid venues will offer a greater level of support to their participants than free venues traditionally do. It is the case that our services are taken up by quite a large number of people who are in free venues, and we regularly help them to maximise the opportunities that they have as much as possible.
Do you think free venues should maybe make more effort to have some sort of media venue for themselves to sort of help out their own acts?
Well, I know that it varies from the different free model organisations offer a variety of different support to participants who are taking part in those venues, and I think that there is a distinction between those different models and and how much the participants are willing to actually contribute to the resources that would be available across the board for all the shows within those venues. So I think the answer is it varies. Yeah.
Okay. And if so, say for example you were doing a free Fringe show and you were taking it up. I remember you were saying I remember reading something about how you are in charge of the media office at the Fringe Central, and that basically encapsulates taking in the world's media and directing them to different shows based around what they're interested in and what the shows are doing. How would a free Fringe show be able to stand out and get your attention and the Fringe?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's really important that everybody understands that we do not make recommendations. It goes right back to the start of the Fringe in 1947, the fact that anybody can take part. And when the Fringe Society was set up 10 years later, it was set up under the very strict auspices that anybody who was taking part in the Fringe would have access to all the services available. And that remains fundamentally the important ethos that we as staff work to. So everybody has access to everything that we do. The best way of making sure that your show stands out, and this applies to whether or not you are a free show or a paid-for show, is to make sure that the media office know about your show and are there to be able to help you. We encourage performers to come in and to see us and to talk to us and to tell us about their shows, and it's by doing that we can then help them to sell their shows to the media.
And how early should that be happening? Should it be happening before the Fringe or the first day?
Well, physically, we recognise that most people don't live in Edinburgh who are performing, and therefore, physically, the time that you should come and see us is as soon as you arrive at Edinburgh. We encourage people to make it one of their very first port of calls. And we have staff who will be dedicated to helping them and who will make appointments to speak to them and who they can talk about how they're selling their show and also what we can do to help in that process.
So is it better to make an appointment than to just turn up?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we have a system whereby people can make appointments, 15-minute appointments, and they can see us. And we're open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. from the beginning of week 0 right through till the end of the Fringe. And you can come as many times as you like. As your situation develops and as the Fringe progresses, we would strongly encourage people to come back and to see us again.
So we shouldn't just send you in a press release.
Well, that's a starting point. But from the beginning of May, we have a service where participants are able to send us their press releases and their flyers and so on, and we will give them one-to-one advice on how to approach selling their show, what media they should be speaking to, what journalists are likely to be interested in their kind of show, etc. And we do that. We do that by email and by Skype from May through until the end of July, and then physically people can come in on a one-to-one basis. So I would say that the earliest that you contact us, the better.
Okay. And in terms of, if say for example you won an award or you were nominated for something, should we come to you and tell you about that, or would you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a whole list of awards that apply to the Fringe. There are over 30 of them. It varies from year to year because we don't organise the awards ourselves. The awards are organised by a range of different organisations, and some years they might decide not to do it, and some years new people might come along and want to organise one. We support those organisations by helping them get tickets for the shows that they want to see that they are considering for those awards, and we engage with them because we think it's a service that helps the audience. So the Fringe has over 3,000 shows each year, and without a doubt, that means that you have to make a bit of, that it makes it a little bit tricky to navigate your way around that number of shows, unless you have some guides and some advice that you can take. And because we don't make recommendations, we look to external people and external bodies to provide that kind of advice. And two forms that advice comes in, or that navigation tool can come in, are good reviews for your shows from the media, and also awards that you might win.
So you're not informed when the nominations come out, we have to actually come to you?
It varies from award to award. So what I would suggest is that anybody taking part in the Fringe, first of all, looks at the list of awards that are on the website, and the awards will have different criteria. Some of them you don't have to do anything to apply for, it just happens automatically. Some of them you actually have to actively apply for. And some awards will vary from, they will only be suitable for various criteria within the program. So, for instance, there's a children's show award, and there are several comedy awards, etc. And so that varies as well. And so I would advise everybody to look at the awards list. And then in the situation where you are nominated or you win, you should definitely come in and tell us straight away, and we can give you advice on how to make the most of the fact that you've had this nomination or this award.
That's interesting that you're not sort of alerted to it. Is it kind of because you have to stay impartial, or is it just because the awards happen so quickly that?
Mostly because they happen so quickly, and so sometimes we will be alerted to them, but it won't be as quick as the performer would like. So that's why even if we are going to be notified ourselves, it's best that, as in terms of a belt and braces approach, it's best that if you know that you've won, you come and tell us.
Outside of support for shows and promotion, do you offer any emotional support for performers who are maybe going through stuff that, like they're struggling with audience numbers, or they're struggling with getting bad reviews?
Yes, absolutely. And we have experienced staff who will be there to give one-to-one advice throughout August, and they will help in terms of giving guidance and advice on how to deal with situations where there might be poor ticket sales or anything like that.
Okay. And so you don't do show recommendations at all. So when it comes to, say there's a story around a show, like if someone's done a stunt or someone's done something like that, should we come to you, or is it a case of we go direct to press? Or
well, we can help you. Well, ultimately it will be the performer, or if the performer employs a professional PR, it will be their responsibility to contact the press directly. But what we can do is we can help by talking you through that stage by stage. So we can help identify which specific journalists would be worth talking to, and then we can help identify how best to go about talking to them and how to pitch the story itself as well. So we can give step-by-step advice.
So you act kind of like an impartial PR service?
Yes.
So with that in mind, do you think it's worth for people to employ PR people if you guys offer a lot of the
Well, I think it depends on. I think what performers should think about in terms of asking the question as to whether they should employ a PR is, firstly, what is it that I want to achieve? What goals would I set for a PR that I would employ? Do I have the budget to pay for it? And that's a critically important one. And related to that, what you can do is you can have discussions with PRs about how much they charge for specific services. So you can break it down to very specific. I want someone to write a press release. I want someone to distribute a press release. What is it that you want the PR to actually do? And so you can be very specific about that, and so you can work out what you have the budget for and what you will get for that specific budget. And then the other question that you want to ask yourself before hiring a PR is how much time am I willing to devote to promoting my show? I've seen some really great shows at the Fringe that have just died at the end of the Fringe and not gone on anywhere, and the reason they haven't is because nobody knew about them. Really great shows in venues with a capacity of 50 to 100, which should have sold, all the seats in that venue, and would have done had they been effectively promoted. But instead, they were playing to 10 or 12 people, and so you you have to recognise that the Fringe is a very competitive environment. There are a lot of shows vying for the attention, not just of the media, but of the public, the ticket buying or the show going public as well. And so, in those circumstances, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're doing everything you can to maximise the opportunities for your show. And therefore, how much time are you able or willing to devote to promoting that show? If you're not able to go out flyering on the high street for 3 or 4 hours a day, you might have to hire a flyering team to go and do your flyering for you. If you're not able to sit down for an hour a day and do some social media, you might have to hire someone to help with that side of it as well. And so the question is, how much time can you devote to that yourself? How much time are you willing to devote to it? And therefore, do you need extra help to do that? And the other thing I would say about hiring a PR is before you hire a PR, speak to more than one, speak to 2 or 3, compare their prices, ask for recommendations from people who have been previous clients of theirs, ask for examples of their work, so that you are confident that your expectations will be matched by what they're able to deliver for you.
That's perfect. I mean, if say for example someone wanted to hire a PR, would the Fringe office have a list of recommended PRs or people? We
do have a list. It's certainly not a list of recommended PRs because our, just as we don't recommend shows, we don't recommend the PRs on that list. So we have a list. We invite the PRs that we know to provide us with details, which we then put on the list, which we circulate to performers. What we try to do is, because we don't recommend the PRs, what we try to do is we try to gather as much useful information for that list as possible, so that the performers can make educated choices about what sort of PR would be good for them. And so we ask for information about what genres they particularly focus in. There is a huge difference between people who have experience doing comedy or those who do theatre, and I would personally be very suspicious about someone who said that they excelled in both comedy PR and theatre PR, because they are such different worlds. It's like the difference between brain surgery and heart surgery.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. It's a specialist thing.
Absolutely.
With social media, with anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of, I personally believe the circuit in general is a meritocracy, but when it comes to the Fringe, that pretty much goes out the window because there are just too many people competing in a short space of time. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a meritocracy in the sense that the opportunity is there for everybody. When I started working for the Fringe several years, which is quite a long time ago now, when I started working for the Fringe, there was still a sense that free shows equaled rubbish shows, and that the quality was not there, and that's completely gone. That it's now, particularly in comedy, now everybody knows that some of the most interesting and lively and funny comedians are working on free shows, and there's no dispute about that whatsoever. And so, in that regard, I think if you as a springboard for future opportunities for comedians, I think that the Fringe is a meritocracy, and it does offer great opportunities for people who are doing all sorts of shows in all sorts of venues under all sorts of different formats.
So, in terms of you don't do show recommendations, but you do pass them on based around what, like, so. Say someone came into you. Say I came to you and I said, I am doing a show, and I'm doing a show. It's called Buddhism and Cats, right? So I would tell you all about that, and you would sort of note it down, or I would give you a load.
Yes. So we would. Well, I think there are 3 things. So you could give us a copy of your press release when it's finished, and any photographs that you have, publicity shots that you have for the show, and you would tell us what the show was about. And so we would then. So that gives us 3 things. A lot of the work that we do is because journalists will come to us and they are looking for shows on a particular theme. And so given the name of your show, someone might come in wanting information about shows on the theme of religion, or specifically of Buddhism. And so we produce lists of shows on specific themes. and so your show would be on that list. Another thing that might happen is that, and quite regularly, so the journalists who have come to Edinburgh to write about shows will write their copy, and then then the newspaper, the news desk and the picture desk will look for images to go with a story that they might be doing about your show. And it's very, very common in August that we will get a phone call in the office at about 12 noon or 1 o'clock from the Times or the Guardian picture desk, and they will ask for a picture of a specific show. And they will say, have you got it, yes or no? Because if you've got it and it's high res and you can send it to them, it's in the paper the following morning. If you haven't, tough luck, they've got to, because they need an instant answer. So they then move on to the next show that they might give that space to. And so, given all of that, it's vitally important that we get as much information and as much of the stuff that we can pass on to other people about your show as possible.
So when you say images, do you mean press shots, headshots, posters, everything?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So we should email that in or bring it on a memory stick, or what's the best?
A memory stick is ideal, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But we have a Dropbox facility as well, so people can use that. So.
Okay. And is there any way of accessing those lists of shows?
For the media?
Yeah.
So the journalists come and ask for them.
Oh, I mean, so if a performer wanted to browse those lists, or are they not public?
No, they're not public. No.
Okay. Other than bring all the information to you in the most effective format possible, what other ways would you recommend for performers to get more coverage for their show?
Well, so the first thing is to get advice on putting together your press release and stuff, and to do it and to start contacting journalists early as well. So. We know that many journalists will start building their itinerary of what they're going to go and see from the time that the programme comes out at the beginning of June onwards. So, and so whenever anyone asks me when should I start contacting journalists, I say one of two things. Firstly, if your show is going on sale with the Fringe before June the 4th, and now there are opportunities for tickets to go on sale every month during January, February, March and April. If your tickets are going on sale early, then I think you should start contacting the journalists when your tickets go on sale. If they are not going on sale until the programme comes out on June the 4th, or you're in a free show, and therefore the list of which will only be available on June the 4th, that's the time that I think you should start contacting journalists.
Okay. And you obviously have a print and an online presence for show listings. Do you track how people are finding out about the shows, whether it's the app or the online or in the paper?
Yes, what we do know is that the print run for the printed programme has not decreased at all in the last decade, despite the massively increased online presence. And so the printed programme, which we print about 450,000 copies, and they all go, by the end of August, they all go. People still use it a lot, and there is still a huge value to being in the printed programme. It's still the principal marketing tool of shows in Edinburgh in August. Ticket sales have gone online dramatically over the last few years. We now sell about 75% of our tickets online. And therefore, what that tells us is that despite the fact that people are using the printed programme as a significant information tool, they are also using the website and the app, and therefore having a presence on the website and the app is also very important.
Okay. And you mentioned, sorry, I should say we're in the Pleasance, and we've just come out of a long talk with you guys, and in it you mentioned that interviews with artists as well as columns from artists are something that journalists frequently want, because, to put it frankly, it's free content for them, but it also adds more exposure and it allows the artist a little bit more freedom in order to sort of express themselves than maybe a press release would. Is there like a place online or like on your website that like a notice board for journalists to put stuff up, or does it all go straight through you?
Yeah, it's mostly word of mouth. So journalists who are putting together supplements or so on, where they want those kind of columns, will come and talk to us. What they will do, because they will do the selection process themselves, but what they will come and ask us is if we know of anyone who might be interested and who might be quite good at writing, who could do one. And so it's one of the things. It's similar to the things that I was talking about earlier. If you come and you tell us that that's something you're interested in and that you're good at, then it makes it much more easier for us to pass your information to people who might be interested in offering you that kind of opportunity.
Okay. And if we were doing a stunt and we wanted to involve media, would you say that's a good idea to come through you guys, or is it a case of going direct to them would be the easiest way? Because obviously that's a completely different kettle of fish than news articles.
Yes, it is, and we can offer a lot of help with that. So we provide something called the Clash Diary, and basically we send that to all the picture desks every single day during August, and it lists all the forthcoming stunts and photo calls that we know of that are happening. And so it allows the photographers and the picture editors who are commissioning the photographers to decide on what might be an interesting image and what they might be interested in. And so it's a really useful tool, and I would have thought that your chances of getting picked up would be considerably higher if the information about your stunt was in the Clash Diary.
So is the Clash Diary like, does that mean... I'm just trying to think of how to phrase it. Does that mean that like the Clash Diary is like an ongoing day by day, these are the stunts that are happening, or is it like a sort of history of this is the stuff that has happened, you can pick it up at any time?
No, this is a live, this is like a live forthcoming events diary. And so it provides two functions really. The first function is that for anyone who's organising a stunt or a photo call, it allows you to pick the best opportunity in order to do it. There's no point in creating a stunt at 11 o'clock in the morning if that is the time that the Traverse Theatre are launching, the photo call for their big show for August. So you want a clear run for your stunt, and so the Clash Diary's first function is identifying when things are happening so that you don't clash with them, as the name suggests. The second function of it is that we then send it to all those picture editors who will then use it to identify and schedule their workload.
What if you wanted to do a stunt but you don't necessarily want them there, you want to just do it and then send in the images?
You can do that. I think that I would always recommend against that, and the reason I would is because a professional photographer will always take higher quality, better images than an amateur photographer would. You have the option that what you could do is you could just hire a single photographer yourself and then send them the images, and that would at least guarantee that the images would be of a high enough quality in terms of being high res, etc., that they would be high enough quality to be used. But you also have to know that when you send them in, you might then be losing a bit of control over that, which, at least if you have a photo call that you've done on a set day, then you know that you can expect those images to appear in the day or two immediately after you've done the photo call.
Makes sense, because obviously journalists have got day-by-day deadlines during Fringe.
Yeah, and a whole series of photo calls have happened today, but a whole series of other photo calls will happen tomorrow. And so today's fresh and interesting stuff has been replaced by tomorrow's fresh and interesting stuff.
Of course, yeah. And in terms of a lot of performers have decided to go solo, in particular, like in terms of not having management or PR or publicists or anything like that. Do you think that trend is a sort of a budgetary thing, or do you think it's a sort of overarching move in the Fringe to become more sort of back to the way it used to be, where it was, quality of acts rather than money talks and shouts and then tries to get in the face of everyone?
Well, I think like everything else at the Fringe, there's no single answer to that question. I think that basically it undoubtedly started because there was a whole strata, particularly of comedians, who could not afford the sort of prices that venues were charging. If you go, and this is going back over 15, 20 years or so, and therefore wanted a more affordable alternative. However, as it developed, what you then saw was people who were doing it for the reasons that you set out. So people who thought that it actually had benefits beyond just being more affordable. And the other interesting thing that we've seen is that the free model, which undoubtedly started and has its roots in comedy, has in the last few years expanded into theatre and cabaret and a whole host of other genres as well. And so I think it's a thriving success, and I think it will always be a part of the Fringe.
do you like the movement then of, like you said, there's lots of really great acts that have gone from paid to free or are sticking with free? Do you like that movement, or is there sort of, I don't want to say a sort of, what's the word? Because you guys get a cut of ticket sales essentially, like they put 20% of tickets through you,
yes,
or something like that, and you guys get an X amount of that cut. So I imagine there is a bit of an agenda behind hopefully having more paid stuff, but also you want your roots as free Fringe to hold up as well. So where do you stand on?
I think the thing where we stand is that the Fringe is there for everyone, you know. And our job is not to create a single model that everybody must then conform to, but our job is to listen to what the artists and the producers are proposing to do, and to find ways of making that work. So, for instance, we have been working in the last couple of years. We have been working with the proponents of Pay What You Want, which is another new model that has come along, and yeah. It's not for us, and particularly in terms of modern technology and websites and so on. That's not the easiest model to actually get to conform to how websites and ticketing websites work. But our job is to try and make it work, not to try and stand in the way of these new creative ideas.
Okay, yeah, it's the Bob's Bookshop and that kind of stuff. And so you're quite flexible then to new ideas and new venues and.
I think that our entire ethos, going right back to the formation of the Fringe Society and the formation of the Fringe itself, is about new and exciting and diverse and actually helping people. So, we very much see ourselves as being there to help and when people come up with new ideas, whether it's in terms of what happens on the stage or whether it's in terms of how that work gets to the stage, our job is to try and turn the ideas of these immensely creative people into real, substantial events.
Okay. And you've said before the world's press basically arrive and come to Fringe Central and talk to you, essentially. Yep. And, I mean, is that like their first port of call, generally speaking? Or is it a case of... Because I know a lot of journalists, and a lot of them say, they get told ahead of time what they need to go and review. They got told they've got a rider of certain shows they want to go and see. So where does the line blur between them having to research stuff when they get up there and them plan stuff when they're down here?
It very much varies from journalist to journalist and outlet to outlet. It depends on who they're working for. There will be some journalists who will be reviewing for newspapers that have large numbers, that have a large team, and they are part of a large team, and will have very little flexibility about where they go. So for instance, if you're writing for a newspaper like the Scotsman or the Herald, where you are part of a theatre or comedy team, you'll get an allocation of shows that you go and see, and the arts editor will allocate those shows. If you are a high-profile national reviewer working for the Times or the Guardian, then you have a great deal of flexibility about what you go and see. And I was talking to a very well-known London theatre reviewer a few months ago, who spends all of August at the Fringe. And what this person does is, before the Fringe starts, they have filled about half their time with shows that they have selected based on the press releases that they've been sent, on the media coverage that the show has had before the Fringe started. And then the other half they fill as August goes on. So they are susceptible to word of mouth that they get on the streets, to reviews that appear in their competitor publications, and also to performers that they might actually meet in the bar late at night. And so they have a mix of the stuff that's actually booked in advance and the stuff that is flexible for them on the day. And then you have other journalists, particularly ones who might only come for a relatively short period of time, and the way they will tend to work is that they will have a lot more free time, and they will go and see things on the spur of the moment. So, for instance, last year, the Edinburgh International Festival had a production called The James Plays, which afterwards came down to London. And several critics who would not normally come to the Fringe came to review The James Plays. But because you could do The James Plays in one day, that meant that if you were here for 3 or 4 days, you then had a set of Fringe shows that you would then go and see, and so those shows were only selected when they were there. Yeah.
Okay, and because of the because of the expansion of the Fringe and the amount of shows there are, there's been quite an influx and quite an increase in the number of student reviewers that are happening around the place. Now, there's kind of two sides on this, where some people think that's diluting the quality of reviews, because obviously they're not as experienced, and as a result, because performers all want a review, we're kind of in the stage where, do we want a review from someone decent who's been doing it a long time, or do we just want a review to put on a poster for whatever reason? What are the Fringe's sort of... I mean, you guys obviously can't monitor it because you're not involved with the press, but do you have any say in that, or do you...
Yes, so there are two things I would say. I think that's a very interesting and a very fair question, and I think it's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. And I think that the answer from the performer's point of view, I think, is it depends on your show. So it depends on whether or not you are the kind of show that is going to have a handful of reviews by the end of the Fringe, or whether you are the kind of show which is a lot lower profile and you'll be happy to get a review. From our point of view as well, it's important for us to remember that reviews are really important for the audience, and for the audience to help them navigate their way around the Fringe. And you mentioned the size of the programme, and so the audience find them really useful, and we want to encourage reviews. But we work with because we have a media accreditation system, we have expectations of the kind of media who we accredit, and that includes sort of student media and student-like media. And we have expectations in terms of, we check that they are genuine websites, that they are going to help sell tickets for shows. And so, for instance, a lot of student websites which exist in universities out with Edinburgh, who don't have anybody reading them in August because they're not in term time, and so they're going to provide little or no help to Fringe shows during August, because nobody's going to be able to read the reviews there anyway. And so we tend not to grant them as much access as we would somebody like FringeCentral FM, which is an Edinburgh University student website, and will be read by, there will be a good few thousand students in Edinburgh during August, and they will read that website, and so a review on there has a much greater value to a Fringe performer than, say, the equivalent at Nottingham University or Manchester University does, because nobody reading that review in Edinburgh is going to go and buy a ticket to see that show based on a review on that website.
No, it makes total sense. And in terms of, obviously there are reviewers that are just starting out who want to be reviewers, who are maybe, at 3 weeks or Fringe Fest or something like that, who, have not got that much experience. Do you think performers should be able to say, I don't want to be reviewed by someone who has less than a certain number of years experience, because I don't want, if they came and they thought I did badly but they haven't got that much experience, I don't necessarily want that tarnishing my show. They might love it, but we can just say that we don't want that.
I think that becomes very, very difficult to manage as a process. If you had a full-time PR, they would help. One of the things that they would undoubtedly do is monitor the review requests that came in. That's one of the things that a PR will do for you, and they will then make qualitative judgments on whether or not that's a good review for you to get. It's not a process that we're able, given the scale of the Fringe and given the scale of the number of journalists that there are there, or reviewers that there are there, it's not something that we would be able to do on a show-by-show basis like that. But what you can take, what I think you can take some comfort from, is the fact that we work with people like Broadway Baby in 3 weeks all the time, to ensure that, because we're offering accreditation to them, that between us, they and us, are ensuring that there is a sort of like a quality bar that everybody, or a quality threshold that everybody who is working for them has reached.
And is that sort of standards that you've set, or internal standards at the publication, or? Well,
it's a collaborative effort. So we talk to them, particularly those ones that have large numbers of people coming to review for them. People like Broadway Baby or 3 weeks, who will have a team that's probably in the region of about 100 people each, and so we will talk to them about the quality of everybody that's in that team. I think performers can take comfort from the fact that we work very collaboratively with people like Broadway Baby in 3 Weeks and the other organisations that have large numbers of reviewers to ensure that those people have reached a certain quality threshold, which the performers would be happy about the quality of their work. And we have processes in place when there are unfortunate incidents, as there will be every year, when one or two people don't meet that quality. And we talk to those organisations about removing their accreditation, and that does happen. So our responsibility to the participants at the Fringe is to make sure that the media that are there are covering them as fairly and as effectively as possible. And so we do monitor it to make sure that that happens.
Something that I find quite interesting, I'm doing the Brighton Fringe this year as well for the first time, and I found out on their website you submit your reviews, and on Edinburgh they go straight up. Is there a reason for that, or is there like a way around that in case you don't want the review to appear for whatever reason? Well,
yes, there is. So the reason, the process that we have because our audience feedback told us that the audience wanted these reviews as a tool for helping them choose what shows they wanted to go and see. And some of the things that the audience spoke about were the fact that they wanted them quickly, and that they wanted if the reviews weren't there, then it was less of a service, and so that's why there's an automated process. There is an opt-out available to people before the Fringe starts. You are able to say that you do not want reviews on the page for your show, and you can opt out altogether.
Interesting. I didn't know that was an option. I thought, but they'll still come. They just won't appear on your show page. So you said that there's an event at the start of the Fringe called Meet the Media. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
And that's essentially where the media it's like a mingling networking event, right?
It's not quite a mingling event. It's a little bit more formal like that. I like to say it's a cross between speed dating meets the Antiques Roadshow. So we usually get about 25 different media outlets, and they each get a table, and then we have about 600 Fringe shows who come along. And everybody queues up, and you have a couple of minutes to pitch your show to a media outlet, and then after you've pitched it, you move on to the next outlet.
Is that so? When you say a pitch, is it a case of remember what your press release says and sort of regurgitate that, or do you mean literally sit down as a person and say, my show is about?
My show is about. I think actually it's one of the most essential things that you have to be able to do before you get to Edinburgh. I often go up to people whenever I meet performers, and I say, "What's your show about?" And I say, "Well, you have to be able to tell me that in 60 seconds." And it's something that I encourage people to think about, not just to do spontaneously, and to practice in front of the mirror. I know that sounds really corny and really stupid, but I think that you have got to be. Edinburgh is a really competitive environment. There are 3,000 shows out there. You've got to be able to tell me what that show is about in less than 60 seconds.
As a comedian, I can tell you now, practicing in front of a mirror is not a problem for things. But do you help with that then? So if I had a pitch that I wanted to try, can I ring, not you maybe, but can I ring someone up at Fringe Central and say...
You absolutely can, yes.
And they're perfectly happy to give you feedback?
Yes, absolutely.
Quite brutal feedback, maybe.
and you can work on it, and then you can phone back again a couple of weeks later.
Okay, that's really useful to know.
And we can do it by Skype as well.
Oh, okay, cool. That's cool. How do you see the Fringe developing in the next 5 years?
Well, I don't.
I hope you don't mean it won't develop at all.
No, what I mean is that that's really not our job. Our job is very reactive. It's to respond to the creative drive of writers, producers, performers, and directors. And so we don't take the lead in developing the future. We respond to the new ideas and the initiatives that come up all the time, and it changes every year.
Do you think the Fringe is getting too big?
There is no such thing.
Well, I only ask because you said it's 3,000 shows a day at the moment, right?
Yes.
And it's obviously going up every year based around the fact that there's more. They're running earlier. They're going later. Could you ever see a time when it would be like a 24-hour thing for,
Well, it pretty much is.
Right.
At the moment. So last year I went to see a show that happened at sunrise on the beach. And you obviously have a huge amount of late night cabaret and late night comedy and so on. And I went to see 2 years ago. I went to see a 24-hour promenading show that lasted literally for 24 hours, but it did include a bit of a lie down in the middle of it.
Yeah, you need that.
And so I think that for as long as writers and performers think that there's a value to them bringing their shows to Edinburgh, then we don't see any reason why it's going to diminish at all. As long as it's to do with the motivation of the people that want to bring their shows there.
I get the impression from your previous answer that I can work out what you're going to say to this. But do you think it's a case of you should view Edinburgh as like a showcase roadshow type thing, or should you view it as some sort of artistic outlet for yourself? Or what I think you're going to say is it can be both. It can.
Yeah. What I would say is that you can decide what your priorities and objectives are, and I think as long as you do that knowingly and with a little bit of forethought, then I think you can have a really successful Fringe experience. We have 1,000 media, we have about 1,000 arts industry professionals and talent scouts who come looking for work as well. We have an audience of about roughly 500,000 people over the space of the month, and so whether it's bums on seats, whether it's being seen by the industry in order to get future opportunities, whether it's about raising your profile in the media, whatever your individual goals are as an artist, we're there to help fulfill them, and the Fringe is the place where you can do a lot of that. But the key to all of that, and the key to it being successful, is to have made wise decisions in advance about what those goals are, very specifically for you and for your work.
Okay. And social media is playing an increasingly bigger part in all performers' lives. You obviously have your own social media outlets, as in the Fringe, not your personal. I mean, I'm sure you do, but I mean, like the Ed Fringe website and Facebook and Twitter feeds and things. How do you pick what gets featured on those?
Well, our underlying ethos that I spoke about earlier, in terms of how we approach the media and being objective and impartial to all the shows, applies on social media as much as it does in any other set of circumstances. So much of our social media is about promoting the Fringe as an event, is rather than individual shows within the Fringe. However, one of the things that's different in social media than in traditional media is that it allows you to piggyback, and so we're perfectly relaxed, and in fact we encourage individual shows and venues and performers to use the Ed Fringe hashtag as an example. And so we won't promote individual shows, but we will provide a landscape and a platform where individual shows can promote themselves.
Last year you promoted hashtag onboard as a hashtag rather than Ed Fringe. Was there a reason for that?
No, that was just part of the overall marketing campaign for the Fringe last year.
And so what is the official hashtag for this year?
Hashtag Ed Fringe.
Just Ed Fringe, not Ed Fringe 2015 or anything?
No, just hashtag Ed Fringe.
Okay, that's good to know. And again, like you said earlier, that there's sort of a list of awards, and I counted 28 in total. Do you think that, because Copstick, I interviewed her a while ago from The Scotsman, she said that she gets quite annoyed with the fact that comedy is not sort of a everyone wins a prize type thing, that's, you're good or you're bad and it doesn't really matter about awards, you should just do it because you're good or whatever. Do you think there are too many awards, or do you think they can offer like a leg up and that's why they're there, or do you think there are some of them are there just for agenda reasons or for trying to boost certain acts?
Well, like I've said to several other of your questions, the answer is both. I think that undoubtedly lots of the award-giving bodies have an agenda that they wish to use the award to promote. I'm thinking of Amnesty International have a Freedom of Expression Award. There is an Environmental Sustainability Award, and so on. And then obviously corporate companies like Foster's, who sponsor both the Edinburgh Comedy Award, which used to be the Perrier, but also So You Think You're Funny for emerging stand-ups. They obviously want to do it because they want to promote their brand and their products and so on, and that's true across the board. And so I think we shouldn't forget, though, that those awards do provide useful tools for the ticket buying public and the show attending public, because they help them to identify what shows might be the best to go and see.
So, because you've spoken now twice, or you've mentioned reviews are something that the public look out for, and awards. Quotes, are they quite important?
Yes, they can be. So I think for a show, I think it's the range of different things that help to sell the show, and so things like quotes and posters and flyers and word of mouth on the street,
star ratings
are all important things.
Do you know what? I mean, obviously it will vary person to person, but as a general rule, do you know what people are looking out for mainly, or is there no set pattern?
I don't think there's much of a set pattern. I think the one thing we can say is that out of all those different tools that we've identified that help people make their mind up, the single most important one probably is still word of mouth. And that means that despite the environmental problems that flyering produces, it is still the single most important thing that you can do in order to sell tickets for your show, or to get people to attend your show.
You mentioned the environmental problem obviously is the fact that people overorder, overflyer, throw stuff away at the end of the Fringe, and I know Festival, for example, work very hard with a recycling company up there to make sure that they're as non-impactful to the environment as possible. What does the Fringe Central do in terms of trying to make sure that?
Yes, so we do two things. Firstly, we can help give advice on some of the best steps that you can take during your ordering process, such as using paper from finding a printer who uses paper from a sustainable source. And the second thing is, at the end of the Fringe, we have a sort of like a drop off and recycle facility, so you can bring your paper, you can bring anything, not just your paper, but your cardboard, your props, anything, and leave them in Fringe Central. And we work with a recycling company to basically take away everything. And I think last year we had 500 million tons of paper.
Wow.
Which was made up of flyers and posters and programs and so on.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot. And I mean, in terms of your impact of the environment, because obviously if you print 450,000 programs, that's sort of a lot of paper. I mean, do you see lowering that? Have you ever thought about lowering that number and then focusing more online? Because I imagine if I was going to the Fringe and I couldn't find a program, I'd just go to the app, or I'd go to the website because I'd want to know that information. Have you? Do you ever think about lowering the number of orders you do just to help the environment?
Yes, we do, and we actually have a commitment to lower it by 25% over the next 5 years. It's something that we will have to educate the audience about, because as I said earlier, it's still the major marketing tool and it's still hugely popular, and so by the end of the Fringe we're running out of them, so people are picking them up and using them, but we are working on, but certainly we recognize ourselves that we want to try and do something about that in the medium term. Do you think there's a reason why flyering is still the primary, or one of the most primary marketing tools up there? Is it just because of historically people sort of come to Edinburgh and expect to be flyed, or do you think it actually is a useful means? I think it's really useful because I think it's because most people are still selecting the shows that they're going to see when they're wandering around the streets. They haven't actually filled their itinerary very often. I think the important thing to remember about flyering, though, is it's not the handing over of the piece of paper which is the important element of the process. It's the conversation that you're having with the person who stops to talk to you. Those are the people that you then translate into audience members, and that again comes back to the being able to sell your show in 60 seconds. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. The comedy section in the Fringe pretty much dominates one of the biggest chunks, if not the biggest chunk, of the festival magazine and programme. Do you think there's a reason why? Do you think it's like chicken and egg because the industry's going up there, we're all going up there, or do you think it's we're all going up there so they all feel like they all are? So comedy is just about a third of the Fringe programme, theatre is about another third, right, and then everything else is the final third. And by everything else I mean music, musicals, opera, art, children's shows, etc., talks. And I think that obviously there has been, beyond the Fringe, there has been a broad growth in comedy in the last couple of decades. Anyway, it's got there's a much larger comedy audience across the country generally, and I think that's reflected in the Fringe. And at the same time, that larger comedy audience has led to an even greater comedy industry as well. And so the promoters and the producers and the talent scouts need somewhere to go where they can see the next generation of talent in a relatively easy way, and Edinburgh provides that for them.
Okay. And do you have any books or websites or recommended reading that we as performers could look up ahead of the Fringe that might help us sort of prepare for it?
Yes, so there are two things. So the first thing is that we at the Fringe Society have actually produced a series of guides which are available on our website, edfringe.com. And those guides cover, many of them will actually now be, for this year, in terms of this year's Fringe, many of them will actually now have passed their usefulness date. So in terms of things like, there are guides to selecting a venue, to registering your show, etc. There are some of them that are still really valuable, and there is one called How to Sell Your Show, which I would strongly urge everybody who is taking part in the Fringe to read right now. Don't even wait until August. Read it right now. But if you wanted to do things in even more depth, there have been a couple of really good books written about the Fringe over the last few years. You can find links to them on our website as well in the participants section. Okay.
And if you could give one bit of advice to a couple of thousand performers who are, I would say that this is probably going to go out and be covered by three types of people. People who are doing their first Fringe show, who are wary of spending money on things they don't really understand, or going up and not really getting the ecosystem. So maybe advice for them. Advice for people who have maybe decided to go up and watch the Fringe, so how they can discover and get the most out of their Fringe. And people who have gone up to, as an industry, participate, but are looking for more of a well-rounded experience rather than just going up and working. Don't know which order you want to do them in.
Okay,
but
so we'll start with the performers then.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I would say to the performers is there's one word that I think sums up what should be your entire approach, and that's planning. I think it's all about planning in advance. That's how you're going to make the most of the experience. That planning, I think, should include, if at all possible, a trip the year before you come. So if you've not already registered a show for this year, but you're thinking that you might want to come with a show in 2016 or 17, what I would say is that you should come to Edinburgh for at least a couple of days during August this year. And you should see what it's like, because you will have for all the podcasts and all the reading that you might do in advance of it, actually seeing it with your own eyes and experiencing it will actually give you far more knowledge that will be of use than anything else in the world will. And so I would strongly suggest that you plan in advance and that you come and see the Fringe before you actually bring your show. And then and part of that planning, I think, also involves bringing your best possible work. So if your work isn't ready, then I think far better to put it off for a year and to work on it and to make it as good as it's possibly going to be before bringing it. And obviously, we've also spoken about the planning your media, planning your marketing, etc. But actually, everything comes down to planning for performers. In terms of the audience, what I would say is be as flexible as you can. Where the audience needs to plan is actually for things like their accommodation and their travel, so that they get the best possible deals. But actually, in terms of shows that you want to go and see, be as flexible and as open as you can. Leave it to remember, this isn't like EasyJet. The prices are not going to go up the closer we get to August. And so leave it until you get there, so that you can read the reviews, you can hear, and most importantly, listen to what people are saying to you. Whether you're in the pub or whether you're on the street in a queue for a show, listen to what other people have been to see and what they're talking about, and also be adventurous. Go and see things that you wouldn't go and see the rest of the year round. You are at the world's largest arts festival with a wide variety of different shows to choose from. Just go for something outside your comfort zone. And in terms of the industry and professionals who go there, I would say that the very first piece of advice that I would give is to make contact with our arts industry office. Go and see our team who are there to help you, and will make sure that you see all the right people, and that you are using your time as efficiently as possible.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on. It was really
You're
nice.
welcome.
Thank you. That was Neil. I can't even tell you how much fun that was. He was so knowledgeable and so lovely and so giving of his time. He'd already done, as I said, like a 2.5 hour chat with like a general auditorium of performers at the Pleasance that afternoon that we met, and even after that was really talkative, really excited, and none of the length of time that he'd been working had lowered his enthusiasm level. He was so passionate about the Fringe, and it's lovely to see that. So I hope you got something out of it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learnt at least one new thing the Fringe can do for you, whether you're going up this year or in a future year. Please do share it with other Fringe performers if you think there's someone who you know who's going up to the Edinburgh Fringe who could benefit from it. I'm sure most performers could. If you liked this podcast and you'd like me to continue making more, please subscribe so it helps me know that there is still a market for it. Please review it in iTunes, because that means that I know what you like and what you don't like, and also future guests can tell that there's people listening and that they're enjoying it. And do share it about as well. The links are all on the website, or you can share the iTunes link, whatever link you want. And also, if you have a few quid spare and you are enjoying this and you want to support the show, please take a minute and consider giving me a couple of quid per podcast that you've enjoyed, to really help the show out and really keep it going. I'm not going to bang on about how long they take to do, because that's not really relevant right now. What is relevant is it's, if you value the content, it would be great if you had a couple of quid spare. If you don't have the money, do not worry about it. Honestly, I'm still going to do them, but it would be great if there was some money coming in for it. So only donate what you can if you can. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.